Long before surveillance was digital, power learned to measure. In 1086, a conquering ruler ordered a survey so comprehensive it turned an entire nation into data. Known as the Domesday Book, it listed land, livestock, resources, and ownership in painstaking detail. This was management through knowledge, a census that made control quantifiable. With every inventory came leverage, and with leverage came stability. It was less about record keeping than about visibility. Once everything was mapped, nothing could hide. The principle was simple but enduring. Information, once centralized, becomes power. The Domesday Ledger marked the beginning of governance by documentation. By knowing precisely what his subjects possessed, the ruling class could tax efficiently, suppress rebellion preemptively, and direct labor with strategic precision. Power no longer depended solely on force, it relied on data. This catalogue of assets transformed the relationship between rulers and ruled, reducing life to the lines of an account book. It was the first large-scale system to turn knowledge into infrastructure. And although its parchment has yellowed with time, its principle never disappeared, it merely changed form. Today, the same dynamic defines our lives under surveillance capitalism. The difference lies in scale and intimacy. Instead of royal clerks with ink and quills, algorithms now conduct a perpetual, real-time census of human activity. Every search, scroll, and purchase adds to an immense digital registry that profiles our movements, preferences, desires, and fears. The modern data broker functions as the new scribe, compiling the invisible domesday of the 21st century. What began as a survey of property has evolved into a mapping of the psyche. Our internal worlds, our attention, moods, and impulses have become the newest territory to be measured and monetized. This information is not passively gathered. It is harvested to predict and influence behavior. Algorithms anticipate needs before they are expressed, shaping what we see and how we feel. Feeds and ads are designed to direct attention just as the medieval survey directed labour toward outcomes that strengthen control. The goal is no longer simple observation, but subtle direction. Managing populations by guiding individual desires. It is governance without decrees, persuasion without awareness. The same core mechanic endures. Knowledge as the instrument of social management. The effect extends beyond data collection. Constant measurement creates psychological dependency. When every action seems observed and optimized, people stop treating themselves as valuable, autonomous beings and begin responding as data points calibrated for efficiency. It is a feedback loop that redefines identity through surveillance. The mastery lies in making compliance feel voluntary, just as it once did through faith. And as the measurement of life itself became the measure of power, another realization emerged. Whoever controls what is recorded also controls what is remembered. Once power understood that documentation could define reality, it learned an even subtler technique, shaping memory itself. Rewriting history became not just a political act, but a method of psychological conditioning. Colonial powers perfected this through narrative design. Their empires advanced under banners of enlightenment, claiming to civilize those they conquered. Violence and extraction were reframed as service and salvation, turning conquest into virtue. They didn't take accountability, they rewrote it. Nothing changed except the frame, and yet the entire story disappeared. This reframing worked because it blurred moral boundaries. It allowed aggression to sound compassionate and made subjugation appear orderly. By presenting invasion as instruction, the colonizers relieved themselves of guilt while manufacturing gratitude among the oppressed. Education systems and missionary work extended the illusion, teaching both the rulers and the ruled that domination was benevolence in practice. Indigenous knowledge was labelled primitive, local governance chaotic. The rhetoric of progress replaced acknowledgement of harm. Wrong was made right simply by changing the words. The burden shifted from action to reaction. Resistance became the problem, not the violence that provoked it. Psychologically, this dynamic is explained through system justification, the tendency to defend existing structures, even when they harm us. People crave predictability, so they rationalize the status quo rather than face the discomfort of injustice. In a colonial setting, the conquering powers used this bias with precision. The colonizers believed in their righteousness. The colonized, coerced through education and social norms, came to internalize the same narrative of inferiority. The civilizing mission worked because it resonated with the human impulse to find meaning and order, even when that order was imposed. Both sides defended the system that confined them, convinced it was natural or necessary. Controlling the past in this way limited imagination. If history painted subjugation as progress, then independence could only appear as regression. Each generation inherited a narrowed horizon, an invisible boundary on what could be thought or desired. This is the quiet victory of narrative control. It doesn't demand silence. It teaches people what not to say. Through selective remembrance, entire cultures were trained to see themselves through the eyes of those who ruled them. The rewritten past produced a compliant present, one that mistook imposed identity for truth. But historical manipulation does not end with empires or borders. Once those in power discovered that rewriting stories could neutralize resistance, the tactic spread to new fronts. Truth could be redrawn to target not just nations but individuals. And soon, a different kind of threat became the focus of this machinery. Those who dared to live or think beyond the roles power prescribed. What followed was a campaign against those whose independence could not be legislated away, the war on independent women. The witch hunts that swept through early modern Europe were not products of hysteria, but instruments of control. They selectively targeted women whose lives existed just beyond the grip of authority, healers, midwives, and widows who maintained knowledge, income, and influence outside sanctioned systems. Their wisdom in medicine and community care represented a rival center of power. By casting these women as witches, emerging religious and medical institutions could erase that competition while claiming moral righteousness. Control was reframed as purification. Destruction was disguised as defense. The charge of witchcraft was a remarkably adaptable tool. It required no evidence, only suspicion reinforced by fear. A woman who lived alone, spoke too boldly, or treated an illness without clerical approval could be transformed into a threat to the spiritual and social order. The accusations themselves were designed to redirect anxiety. When misfortune struck, the community was told the danger came not from the powerful, but from the powerless among them. Authorities rewrote the scene, turning the victims into villains, convincing the public that safety meant submission. It was not rebellion that endangered society. It was the woman who refused to kneel. The supposed battle against divine evil masked a deeper restructuring of power. The church and the rising professional class of male physicians found a shared motive. By eliminating female healers and midwives, they secured control over the body, both medical and spiritual. Knowledge once passed through women's hands became institutional property. The herbal remedy was renamed superstition. The birth ritual became a medical procedure. What had been intimate communal wisdom was recast as dangerous secrecy. The campaign was not about eradicating wickedness. It was about defining who could speak the truth about life, pain, and healing. This pattern has outlived the witch trials. Whenever marginalised groups gain recognition or influence, they are recast as threats. Their empowerment is reframed as destabilisation, their autonomy as arrogance. Each new version of the witch hunt relies on the same psychological mechanism: make something feel rare or dangerous so people stop thinking and start reacting. The panic itself becomes proof of the danger. By shaping fear, power secures compliance without ever appearing coercive. The witch hunts demonstrated how control survives not by silencing voices outright, but by teaching a population to mistrust those who think or live differently. Once that suspicion was embedded into culture, it no longer required fires or trials to do its work. The technique endured, refined, mechanized, and ready for new uses. When authority moved from altars to assemblies, persuasion needed a new stage. The pulpit gave way to the printing press, and later to the broadcast signal. Words replaced fire as instruments of conviction. The shift from faith to information did not weaken control, it refined it. Propaganda became the secular sermon, preaching not salvation, but alignment. The Industrial Revolution amplified this transformation, replacing divine command with engineered consensus. Where spiritual leaders once invoked God to secure obedience, modern institutions learn to summon belief through repetition and design. Edward Bernays, often called the father of public relations, recognized how powerful this new machinery could be. A nephew of Sigmund Freud, he saw that influence worked best not through logic, but through the unconscious mind. Drawing on Freud's theories, Bernays advised corporations and governments that emotions, desire, fear, envy, could govern people more reliably than reason. He argued that democracy could be maintained only if the masses were guided by those who understood these emotional levers. After World War I, aware that the term propaganda had become toxic, Bernays rebranded it as public relations. Behind the softer name, the goal remained the same: control and regiment the public mind without its awareness. His methods fused psychology with production. Campaigns no longer sought to inform but to arouse. Advertising and politics both learned to bypass thought, speaking directly to impulse. The result was a kind of managed instinct. People believed they were choosing freely while responding to cues they did not see. What had once been called faith was reconfigured as loyalty to brands, to ideologies, to nations. The emotional structure of religion, devotion, fear, redemption, was not dismantled, it was repurposed. The state learned this lesson quickly. During World War I, President Woodrow Wilson's Committee on Public Information, known as the Creel Committee, used every medium available to turn a pacifist population into fervent supporters of war. In just 6 months, the campaign transformed neutrality into outrage. Posters, films, and newspapers repeated patriotic narratives until doubt itself seemed suspect. Through sheer saturation, propaganda turned private conscience into collective emotion. Dissent didn't need to be banned, it was drowned. The strategy's brilliance lay in manufacturing consent rather than demanding it. Agreement became an illusion, constructed from managed symbols and orchestrated emotion. Citizens came to feel that supporting official policy was both natural and righteous. They thanked the system for protecting them from chaos, unaware that the chaos itself was often manufactured to justify control. When influence moves beneath awareness, domination looks like harmony. From Bernays' laboratories of persuasion to the governments that adopted his playbook, a new faith quietly emerged, no longer centered on salvation but on satisfaction. And soon, fulfillment itself would be redesigned into something that could be bought, displayed, and endlessly pursued. For the first time, mass persuasion no longer needed belief, it needed appetite. The new doctrine was consumption itself, and its altar was the marketplace. Karl Marx once described religion as the opium of the people, soothing unrest with promises of peace in the afterlife. In the wake of World War II, a new opium emerged, the consumer paradise. Its narcotic was not faith, but the rhythmic comfort of acquisition. Shopping malls replaced cathedrals as communal spaces, carefully designed to evoke purpose and belonging through purchase. Lighting, sound, and layout work together to create gentle disorientation, a trance of desire that felt like choice. Advertising became the priesthood of this new order. It offered instant redemption through products, selling fulfillment one transaction at a time, where religion promised salvation tomorrow. Consumerism promised transformation today, through skin cream, a car, or a new appliance. The message was consistent. You are incomplete, but the cure is within reach. The unease it sold was the same unease it resolved, forming a self-sustaining loop of dissatisfaction and relief. The product was never the real goal. It was the brief euphoria of purchase that mattered. The system thrived on addiction to the relief it sometimes gave. Each moment of satisfaction faded quickly enough to demand renewal, keeping the believer forever engaged in the rituals of spending. This tactic worked through intermittent reinforcement, a psychology of reward as old as gambling. Most purchases delivered only fleeting pleasure, but occasionally one seemed to change everything. That irregular success kept people hooked, returning again and again in search of the next small miracle. It made you feel lucky to get so little. The restless promise of new and improved ensured there was always another ascent to attempt, another version of yourself to buy. Over time, the behaviour became self-regulating. The faithful no longer needed persuasion. They sought it out, chasing the next dose of validation hidden beneath the language of lifestyle. Consumerism introduced a new form of conformity. Ownership replaced morality as the primary measure of belonging. To keep up with trends was to stay socially alive. To fall behind was to fade into obscurity. Dissent was not punished by heresy trials, but by invisibility. To question the system risked not eternal damnation, but exclusion from circles of status, opportunity, and recognition. What had once been rebellion now appeared as dysfunction. Advertising quietly redirected discontent, transforming revolutionary potential into private anxiety over appearance and adequacy. The energy that might have challenged power was absorbed by the pursuit of comfort and display. The brilliance of this mechanism lay in its subtlety. It pacified through pleasure, not fear, replacing moral commandments with marketing cycles. Every choice appeared personal, yet the options were pre-selected. Every feeling of freedom was an artifact of design. And as consumption perfected its hold over attention and desire, a quieter, more pervasive form of judgment began to emerge. An invisible authority that could not only guide what we buy, but decide what we see, believe, and become. The algorithmic inquisitor took shape quietly, hiding in lines of code rather than cloisters or courts. What once depended on clerics now operates through data engineers, and the instrument of judgment is no longer scripture, but engagement metrics. Social media algorithms sit at the center of this new order, deciding what knowledge is virtuous, what is suspect, and who deserves to be heard. They do not interrogate with words, yet their questioning is constant. Each click, pause, or reaction feeds an invisible tribunal determining the reality we inhabit. These systems are not neutral. They are designed to maximize engagement, and the most efficient way to keep attention is through emotion. Outrage and fear outperform curiosity and reason, so the algorithm amplifies what provokes and inflames. It learns that anger is adhesive, that conflict extends scrolling time. In doing so, it creates a digital inquisition in which judgment never ends, but is endlessly refreshed post by post. The illusion of diversity masks a narrowing of perspective. Each user receives a curated vision of the world, one calculated to affirm existing beliefs and sustain emotional attachment to them. Within these echo chambers, dissent becomes dangerous. Dialogue gives way to performance. The algorithm constructs discursive bubbles that reward conformity and penalize deviation. Every debate turns into a battlefield. Every platform becomes a permanent combat arena. where people wage daily wars for validation and symbolic victory. These spaces feel participatory, yet they operate through exclusion. A modern-day heretic is anyone who disrupts the moral rhythm of their digital tribe. Whether by questioning a trending cause or presenting inconvenient data, the act of dissent invites cancellation, the 21st century version of public punishment. Cancellation differs only in form, not in function, from the Inquisition's historical counterpart. Instead of flames and prisons, it uses visibility as both weapon and reward. Likes and retweets replace confession and absolution. Public shaming enforces the faith, ensuring that others witness what happens to those who speak out of turn. The same ancient instinct to preserve group purity persists, translated into the coded language of virality. Social media makes conformity feel virtuous and dissent feel obscene. The result is moral panic without formal decree, an automatic calibration of thought managed by algorithms too fast for reflection. This digital inquisition is self-sustaining. The more it provokes outrage, the more attention it captures, and the more it learns how to provoke again. We become participants in our own conditioning, mistaking reaction for conviction. The system does not demand belief. It manufactures it through repetition and emotion until compliance feels like choice. Yet beneath the surface of this machinery lies something older, an architecture of influence that works not through data, but through symbols. Before algorithms turned behavior into prophecy, power spoke in another hidden language, one still etched into the surfaces of the world around us,